Good evening, friends. It's Holy Thursday. In some traditions, Maundy Thursday, a day in Holy Week that sometimes is taken for granted, misunderstood, underappreciated. But Holy Thursday is the night in which, as believers, we say that Jesus established the Lord's Supper or the Eucharist. It's the night where he has that final meal with his disciples. And maybe the image that comes to your head is Da Vinci's Last Supper. Whatever it is, Jesus knows that the events that will end his life are just hours away, and he takes time to share a final meal with his disciples. And the 3 out of the 4 Gospels, the synoptic Gospels actually outline the meal and the discourse, etc. But John kind of presupposes the meal. It's understood that it happens. This is the meal where Jesus took the bread. And when he had given thanks, he blessed it and broke it. And he gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take this, all of you, and eat from it. For this is my body, which is broken for you." And in a similar way, when he took the cup, he also gave thanks, blessed it, and he gave it to his disciples, saying, "This cup, this chalice is the cup of the new covenant of my blood. Blood of the new and eternal covenant, which is poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Take and drink all of it." Jesus reminds us that as often as we eat this bread and we drink this wine, we tell the world of the Lord's death and resurrection until he comes again. And maybe you didn't have the elements with you. Maybe there was no bread at your disposal. Maybe there was no wine or grape juice at your disposal in this moment. But allow me to remind you that we are members of his body. This blessed, this broken body. All around the world, in times of hurt and pain and in times of celebration. And so when we say amen at the end of communion, we're, like St. Augustine said, we are saying amen to what and to who we are. Members of God's body. Well, like I said, John presupposes this event. And in verse 4, Jesus rose from supper, laid aside his garments, and took a towel. And he girded himself. And after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel which he was girded. And Jesus takes on a servant role. This was probably the most degrading, humiliating, most lowly acts and disposition Jesus could be placed in. And this is where we say he instituted the act of foot washing, the ordinance of humility, if you will. And Jesus, he throws the disciples off because Jesus, their leader, their hero, the one they're following, should not be seen in such a subservient position. As a matter of fact, by the time he gets to Peter, you got to keep reading. Time doesn't allow me to dig in. By the time he gets to Peter and Jesus have this back and forth like, "Jesus, you're not going to wash my feet. You're not going to even touch me. Don't get any ideas, Jesus." And Jesus like, "Peter, like, unless this happens, you have no part of me, no investment. You're not actually part of the group." And as we go down, Jesus finally is able to wash Peter's feet and all of the remainder of the disciples. And he finishes, verse 12, read it with me. When he had washed their feet, taken his garments and sat down again, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord. And you say, well, for I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet." Now this is Not necessarily literal. Some of y'all got foot phobias. I'm not trying to make you throw up and pass out. But what I want you to understand is Jesus actually says it in verse 15, for I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. And so I think the invitation as we celebrate the installation of the Eucharist, the inauguration of the Eucharist and the Lord's Supper and Holy Communion, whatever you want to call it, and as we reflect on a Jesus who is not too big and bad to be found serving you and I give you the same encouragement that Jesus offers, that we follow his example, that we do as he has done. And it looks different for different people. And not all acts of service have to be the same. But let us be the hands and the feet of Christ. We've said it before. We've quoted that ancient church historian. Christ has no hands except yours. Christ has no feet except yours. And so let us be the active embodiments of a disposition of service as we follow him who came and washed us, not just our feet, but washed us clean and made us whole. This Holy Thursday, as we continue into the remainder of Holy Week and beyond, may service be our disposition, that God might be glorified as we serve, knowing that whatever we've done, even to those who are perceived to be the least, it's as if we've done it to Jesus himself. God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow.